places we know to somewhere we don't. And if we make a wrong turn, if we take the long way, I swear it's okay. I swear it's okay. Streets they follow desire, follow desire. To roads from the places we know, let's go somewhere we don't. And if we make a wrong turn, lines astray on concrete, I swear it's okay. Do you swear it's okay? It's the hardest map to make. It's the longest path to take. All the fragile hearts will break. Miles and miles down the road, stuck in the dirt. Left behind the lives that we know, the ones that we don't. Well, I guess we made a wrong turn, losing our direction. You swear it's okay? Do you swear it's okay? It's the hardest map to make. It's the longest path to take. All the fragile hearts will break. It's the hardest map to make. It's the longest path to take. All the fragile hearts will break. Roads, where do we go? Where do we go? Away from the places we know to somewhere we don't. Away from the places we know to somewhere.
All right.
What's up? Hello.
Welcome to Free Thinker Radio, 90.1
Hey, we're in the
KPFT
same
Houston.
room again.
We are in the same
He's
room.
6 feet away.
No.
He's 6 feet away.
We are not 6 feet apart.
Dude, which feet are you talking about? Anyway. It feels
Mike
like
has got
6 feet.
small feet.
Yeah, it feels like 6 feet to me. Anyway.
We're back again for another episode of Free Thinker Radio. Right now we're live on Facebook, on Houston Free Thinkers page, Free Thinker Radio, on Conscious Resistance, the Derrick Bros page, and live on YouTube at Conscious Resistance. And this will be live, of course, Friday on 90.1 KPFT Houston, where we're always thankful to be sharing our message, especially in these crazy times. There's a lot of information to share, as we always try to do here. And as always, we've got, I know you've got a lot of stories, Mike. I'm looking like a dozen links already.
I know there's just, we need more time. We need more time. I can rocket through a lot. Let's get into the local and just get going.
All
we
right.
were listening to Rose of the West. That's a music that was sent to us from Australia. Happy to play that great sounding song, get you into thinking about getting somewhere else. If you listen to the lyrics of it, it's pretty interesting. But yeah, so if you've got music, you want us to play music, message the page. What are we broadcasting? Oh, you already mentioned all that. Never mind. Send us music because we love to get into it. We got more music coming at the halfway mark. But in the meantime, let's get a little bit of local news here. The Harris County Commissioners have voted to extend that recently issued mask order until the end of August 26th. Feels like forever away. I mean, we're just barely at June. That's like almost 2 more months of mask order.
All the way to August, the end of August?
Yep.
Jeez.
It's going to be a while. And that's just for the businesses still?
Yeah, the order directs any businesses providing goods or services to require all employees and visitors to wear face coverings in areas of close proximity to coworkers or the public.
It's really any and all.
And it's getting everybody to police everybody, and we see the effects of that quite often.
Well, we just had the mayor come out yesterday, and he named the first 3 businesses on his wall of shame.
Oh, who's on the shame wall?
So there is the Spire, which is like a nightclub downtown.
I've been to it. Let me add it to my list.
The place,
It's high price drinks.
Poor, POUR, like poor behavior, which is downtown. That one, and then some other restaurant I can't remember on like the west end over off Highway 6 or something like that. But yeah, they basically got put on. He said the first 3 businesses on his wall of shame, that he might take other actions later, or who knows what that means. But basically, they were accused to have been violating occupational, like having too many people, too much occupancy at the moment because it's not supposed to be at 100% capacity, or not fully social distancing and things like that. So I don't know. Like you said, Micah, it's like you got people snitching on each other or tattling on each other, and people can think whatever about coronavirus, but it doesn't seem like a healthy environment to be creating that sort of mentality where you're just going out and snitching on people. In fact, I went out to a restaurant last night. I'm not going to say where, but they weren't making anybody wear masks, and it was really cool. I got to go in there and sit down and didn't get bothered about it, and was able to eat, and everybody was fine, and everybody kind of kept their distance still, but had meals, and it wasn't a big deal.
Is sit down still open in Houston?
Yes.
I think that is a bit ironic. Inconsistent, because they closed it down originally. You couldn't eat inside anywhere, but now, so just people who are eating are allowed to take their mask off, or do you need a special flag?
Well, that's how they tried to act in one of the restaurants I went into. They tried to say, you have to wear your mask until you're eating. So I went to the bar and got a pina colada because, how are you going to drink that through a mask? But, obviously nobody wants to be sick, and to criticize these policies is not the same thing as to say, spread the virus. I think that's a jump.
And also, right? I don't think,
because you could not support the mask order and still keep your social distancing, keep clean, maybe go places, don't get in other people's faces. I don't know how often all y'all get in people's faces. I'm just saying that, this absolute hardline position that if you don't support the mask order, then you trying to kill grandma is a bit much. And I see that out there quite a bit.
Well, so I'm looking at this other story because we were just talking about the mask order and the emergency declaration being extended. Well, a couple of days ago, they were also saying that Judge Lena Hidalgo is fighting to get another stay-at-home order after local officials lifted the previous one, trusting that the city would take precautions. And she said, quote, "We need folks to stay home. We need folks to be a part of this effort and work together as a community for the sake of our health, our community, all of our neighbors. But ultimately, the governor has the final say on if she can do that." So she said, "We have to be patient and have a more sustainable reopening so that we can have more economic opportunity over the long haul instead of having the situation where we're bouncing between open and closed." And then it talks about, as many people mentioned, that there was a public alert, a text message that went out all around Harris County on Friday. People got these messages from the county issuing an alert, moving to red alert, kind of like the terror threat alert, moving to red alert now. So
how long were we on condition orange or whatever in the terror world?
Forever, for years.
We're still on it probably. Does it matter? Do you live differently?
So I'm sure you guys have heard as well, in this whole conversation, and it's kind of been a national conversation, that this places like Texas and Florida that are reopening, they're being accused of reopening too soon with the numbers. We're being told they're spiking. And same thing with Greg Abbott here in Texas. People are giving him crap.
It's the cases that are spiking.
Well, they're showing, that is true. But either way, the way they're filtering is the cases are on the rise, and it's these governors' fault because they opened the beaches up. And Abbott did say in a statement that he felt like, or maybe we did make a mistake opening too soon. So on Friday, he announced a new order that restaurants need to go back to 50% capacity, and gatherings of 100 people or more would need special permission, and that rafting and tubing businesses had to close. And he said he regretted allowing bars to reopen. So, he's again saying they don't want to go back and forth. We want to close down in targeted ways, obviously using hindsight, but also the data that we have. Closing bars is an appropriate strategy. So that, I think that we're in Houston and Texas and a lot of places in the U.S. and elsewhere are in for another shutdown. Like, I feel like that's where we're, inevitably headed if things keep going this way. And we had this other story, Galena Park on the east end of Houston had a curfew after Harris County went to red alert that you just mentioned, Micah. So they are on a curfew from 10 p.m. till 5 a.m. indefinitely. And then Pearland, which is in Houston, but technically their own city, their mayor did a mask order, which is inside and outside. So, this whole Houston area has got like all this crazy stuff happening.
I just don't understand the curfew for a virus.
Yeah.
Like,
it likes to come out.
What is the scientific reason, or what is the actual reasoning for a curfew? Like, are people supposedly looting? Because, like, that's usually why someone would put a curfew in. I just really don't understand. Like, we just want to reduce travel from these hours. It's kind of confusing. And then they're deciding who's essential during that time. So I don't know, what kind of precedent is that creating where we're putting curfews for a virus?
It's really weird. I think that's a good question.
And the question
it shouldn't be what do you mean?
And I keep coming back also to like what is the role of government in our health, and like whose choice that's why people are protesting the mask order, because like we're not necessarily against wearing masks if like you believe that's like doing your part, or like or if it makes other people more comfortable around you. I don't know. I'm just on.
Well, I don't need the government to tell me to not do heroin.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess maybe some people need the government to tell them to respect, these compromised individuals or whatever, or to not go to work if they're sick. I on this vein, I saw people complaining about the app, that people weren't using the app, and I don't remember where the article was, but it's just in that same vein. They're like, well, if they're not wearing masks half the time and they're not using the app, so it's like that same sort of logic. What's next? The mandatory app?
Yeah, I don't know. It's more just like a right to treat your body like the way you want to be treated, and I think it's more of like at your own personal risk. And considering the death rate is where it is, like I think that should be a risk that we're allowed to take. And I don't know.
I think people have to evaluate risk versus reward, and what are we losing for what we're gaining. We are probably saving some lives, but I think maybe the biggest thing that's saving lives was just the public becoming conscious of it enough. All this bickering about it and such, I'm not so sure that that's done anything to save lives, but just learning to be a little bit cleaner, a little bit more, respectful of others might have been a good thing.
And if there's another shutdown, there's not another round of bailouts. There's not another round of rent saving. There's not another.
I see it a different way. If there's another lockdown, there's going to be more bailouts, and there's going to be more bailouts. So
yeah, but not in timing with Houston.
So Johnny, I want to go back for a second, because one of the listeners actually asked, well, what is the role? Because you asked that question, like
that's a good question. I don't necessarily know. Like some people, do you want government to tell you which medicines like you should take, or do you want to be able to research that for yourself? Part of the problem is you want the security of government telling other people to keep you from getting sick. So it's a security versus freedom role in some sense.
Always.
And then that comes with responsibility. So are you going to be able to have the responsibility to do your own research and go off what you like? If you've researched masks and that's the way that you see is like preventing everything, not everyone has to think exactly like you, and not everyone has the same threshold for what risk they cause to their body. And I don't know. I just don't think that we should be telling people, getting involved in people's lives, telling them if they could go outside based off of a health concern. That's kind of like where I'm going. It's just a dangerous idea, because this is also something that our government has. They're not the most trustworthy people, and this wouldn't be this wouldn't be the hardest thing to. What's going to be next year's virus, and they're in bed with all these vaccine companies. The whole thing's questionable. So
yeah, and I want to add to that, Johnny. So I actually went to a protest this past weekend that was called Unmuzzled the Freedom Rally, and it was people who were I don't necessarily want to say against the mask, but more kind of arguing what you were saying, that like they should have freedom of choice to decide if they want to wear a mask. A lot of these people also might say that they want to have choice when it comes to vaccines and things like that. And unfortunately, this whole mask debate in the mainstream has become kind of a Democrat left or right issue, or at least they're trying to make it that way. Like, oh, Joe Biden wears a mask and he's calling for, which is, to me is crazy. Joe Biden's calling for,
I think the
federal
entire
mandated
issue,
like they want a federal law to mandate masks, but then Trump's not wearing a mask, right? So then people see it as like, oh, you must be right or left depending on where you wear a mask. So I went to this event and it was kind of getting turned in that way. The people who were wearing the mask were mainly right wing, and were basically, they started chanting Blue Lives Matter and just different things like that, which I didn't necessarily agree with or wasn't really into. But ultimately, I had a chance to talk to both sides and like let the people who were there, because there were some counter protesters coming to be like, essentially, you guys are protesting the wrong thing. They said they came from a protest about LGBTQ immigrant rights, and they heard about this protest called Unmuzzled, and like, well, we're going to come protest them and tell them there's more important things you should be protesting, which to me sounds just such a weird way to spend your energy. But I actually want to play you guys a short clip of this this video, just like a minute or two of it, so the audience can hear some of this back and forth between these two people. And again, these are both Houstonians here in the city. One of them's wearing a mask, and that's the man you'll hear in the video. The other one, the woman, is not wearing a mask. And this is just like a minute or two of their conversation. So check this out.
Hey, let me just do all this reckless stuff and not care about my customers. That's not what every business owner is like. We care about our customers, right? But what's that?
I know, my dad's a business owner. He's trying to open a business right now and he's struggling because of COVID.
Yeah.
But like, he has to understand that like, if you go through with that and you're risking lives.
Go through with what?
Opening a business and not mandating masks, then you're risking lives.
So like, how do I provide for my family if my business is shut down?
The government is giving out like.
I don't want the government's help.
Unemployment, then that's your decision, but the government.
I don't want you to force your help on me.
You're living in a country with the government. You don't really have a choice.
Exactly. Why are you taking my choice away? This is my body, my life, my face, my job. Why is it not my choice? Why are you taking my choice away? And you're doing so with a threat of violence.
It's your choice to kill or risk killing other people. That's why. It's because other people's lives are at stake.
Okay. Okay. And this is not meant as offensive, but that's a cool opinion. Don't force it on me. Okay?
It's just a difference of belief. I'm more authoritative, you're more libertarian. We're really not going to meet on something like this.
I know, I understand that. But all of your opinions on like how society should work, that's fine if you want to get together with like a group of people that think like you and want to like, put their resources together and help each other like that. I think that's a beautiful picture of like what a free market can do if you want to do that. But when you all of a sudden want to force your ideas on how a society should work like that, and how like forcing masks on people like me who don't agree with your opinions and beliefs on that, all of a sudden you're threatening me. You are literally threatening me with violence. If I don't listen, I know that's a stretch in your mind, but listen, what's going to happen if I don't comply? What's going to happen if I open my business and don't go along with your regulations that get written into law?
You get shut down.
Yes.
And you start for
What happens if I refuse?
Stuff.
What if I just want to live my life, do my thing? What if I keep living my life like that? They're going to come in and they're either going to fine me, which is violence because they're taking what belongs to me, or if I don't comply, they will put me in a cage, right? And put me in jail, right?
Right.
Violence.
Right.
You are advocating violence on me if I don't operate according to your beliefs. Am I wrong?
Kind of.
Which, here's the thing. Sometimes in society, violence is necessary. If you rape somebody, violent things need to happen to you so that doesn't happen again, right?
You should get fined so it doesn't happen again.
Yes, I agree with that. If you are like trying to actively hurt somebody.
Which is what you're doing by not mandating masks. You're
Except,
actively hurting
here's the
everyone who is
difference.
voting.
Here's the difference, right? So like if I were to stab somebody, there's no debate that I just hurt somebody and violence needs to come upon me. Like they need to take me to jail right now, right? There's no debate about this. There is a huge debate. People can't even agree. Not even all the doctors can agree about what's going on with coronavirus. You have an opinion. I have an opinion. Everyone has a different opinion. So if we can't come to an agreement here, why should you be able to force it on me?
I'm down to come to an agreement, Brand. Like, I think, like, if we just wore masks.
All right, so that was just a quick clip of my events at the Unmuzzled Freedom Rally. What do you guys think about that? I mean, I think that there was, and what we didn't show there was just a real quick clip that is ultimately they did come to some agreement where they're like, hey, I do respect your opinion and I appreciate that. This, there was at first kind of screaming, and I was able to ask her some questions, and even though there was some major disagreements and just philosophy, it seemed like they kind of were at least able to understand, like, hey, these people have concerns. They're not just idiots. Because one of the guys was just yelling Nazis, like, at the crowd, which was, I don't care which side of the argument you're on, it's not very effective. Like,
they're kind of stuck.
Just like Nazis.
People use that word so loosely nowadays.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, so that's what's going on in Houston. One other just brief mention, Micah, if you want to go ahead and get trained as a disease detective, you can do so now for free at the U of H College of Medicine.
Well, that's part of that new jobs training that we're going to have, right?
Free online contact tracing.
We get a lot more of that sort of training, how to be a contact tracer.
This is actually, it's available for free right now on Coursera. You can go learn through U of H. And
public service announcement here?
No, it's just it's funny to me that this is already happening. The program's already been developed. As students can now get trained to be disease detective contact tracers and be a part of the case identification program with the city. So I don't know. I know that worries a lot of people. We've talked a lot about the potential dangers and implications of health surveillance or biosurveillance, which was in that stimulus package of billions of dollars that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. But talk about what's going on locally, Mike, with this funding with the police.
I think it's kind of important to get into because there are quite a few conversations occurring that don't often happen over the last 10 years. And the whole defunding and questioning the police on such a large scale has not really happened. So, it's an opportunity to discuss these things and to see, different approaches other places are having. I think later in the episode we'll talk about New York, but because it's kind of tied into that, I thought this was something worth mentioning. And again, this is from Texas Tribune, and I'm going to skip into it quickly. And we've talked about this a little bit, that despite calls to cut funding from advocates and at least one city council member, Houston City Council increased its police budget Wednesday from $945 million to $964 million. This is a little bit older, from mid-June, but it's still important. Because it's important to incentivize 65 to 70 of these people that wear badges and guns and go around policing for Houston. Up to 70% of the Houston police. That was an interesting.
They live out
because something is turning social services to take the work off police officers. He says, "quote, we are asked our police officers to do way too much." Like I said, Senator Cornyn and Cruz were there, among other officials. He says, we asked them to police. We asked them to be social workers. We asked them to go on crisis intervention. We asked them to deal with the homeless. We asked them to deal with domestic abuse and violence. So Turner's comments echo those of police reform advocates nationwide who are calling for a defund the police. Now, I think if you really thought about defunding the police, that's not the same as reform. But that's a different discussion. So they're clumping that all together, right? A movement in the wake of Floyd's death that demands law enforcement funding be cut or invested in education and other social programs. But as we just pointed out a moment ago in the beginning of this little section, the Houston police are not being even reduced, having fund reductions. They're having expansion at the same time as Mayor Turner is approving expansions to the spending at Houston Police. He's saying we also need more in social services. And if you really weren't for police violence, think about this. Every one of these social services that is coming as a representative of the government to a door, if you don't comply, doesn't that eventually always lead to a police officer? So maybe it doesn't start with a police officer, but if we a little bit more money from you for now for social service ones, where they go to maybe a domestic violence call, or maybe they go to a report of child abuse like CPS is supposed to. I don't know. I think it's not clear, and he's just asking for more funding of social services without saying which services would come into play to reduce HPD, since that's what we're really talking about here, role in people's lives. So if we're asking HPD to do too much, and he's saying, well, we're asking them to do all this stuff and we need more social service money, well, where is that money going? And how will those necessarily stop HPD from getting into people's lives? I think it was like a big story in the Texas Tribune to get the word out that this is what he's doing, but it didn't really, maybe it's because it's such a new idea to some of these people that they haven't, had the full discussion. So maybe Mayor Turner, to give him some benefit of the doubt, maybe he's preparing for eventually when the funding, they can't pay the pensions now, so he should be preparing. But maybe he's trying to prepare, trying to offset, trying to get in front of the people that are demanding something and appear to give something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy. You see Acevedo, his face in there. He's involved. For those who don't know, he's the chief here in Houston, but he's also the president of the Major Cities Chief Association, has lots of national influence. We're going to cut now to a music break real quick. We got 2 songs. We're going to play one from Craze Music, and then, Johnny, what are we going to hit from our
Border
friend?
Patrol from our buddy Trip. Shout out to Trip. We're going to play Infotainment.
Infotainment. All right, cool. Well, you're listening to Free Thinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT Houston. We're going to go to a quick music break, and we'll be back. We got more news to talk about. Johnny's got a study he wants to bring to you guys about coronavirus that I think is going to be pretty important, and lots of other interesting things. So stay tuned. This is Free Thinker Radio. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Welcome back to Free Thinker Radio. My name's Derrick. I'm here with Micah and Johnny. We're live, of course, on several places. So check us out on Facebook.
Johnny's not on here. He's just a square.
Johnny doesn't have his camera on. He doesn't want you to see who we were. We just decided to play one quick song because there's so much stories to cover. And as we've told you guys before, you're listening to this live on a Tuesday, but we're recording it for Friday on 90.1 KPFT. And on that show,
3 p.m.
we only have an hour with them. So we try to cram as much news into an hour so that the people of Houston can get informed. So with that in mind, Johnny, jump ahead into your story that you wanted to cover, this study that just came out.
Yeah, so I got this off Fox News, not my favorite news channel. But as always, I like to read the information and just try to see what's going on for myself. So it says here, midday sunlight is capable of inactivating 90% or more of the SARS-CoV-2 virus after 34 minutes of exposure, a recent study found. I do have the study over there. I don't know if Derrick has it pulled up, but there's a chart there, and let me go ahead and Control F Houston one more time.
I got that open.
So the study, it's kind of cool because specifically if you're in Houston or Miami, apparently those are the only places where up to 99% of the virus should be killed. So it says Only in Miami and Houston will receive enough solar radiation to inactivate 99% of the virus in spring.
Houston.
So it does go by
Kill the
seasons.
virus.
So in most places, the midday sun from like 12 to 2, I believe, can kill 90% or more of the virus if you go outside and enjoy the sun. So, but in the winter, it goes below 90%. So supposedly the winter obviously just doesn't have enough UV rays. But I just really thought that was interesting. And
Now, is
another
this talking
thing,
about the virus just floating in the air, or how is it done?
so
on
it just kills the
surfaces?
virus. So I'm sure like if it's not gonna like go inside your body and kill it, but if maybe you touched it or if your mask got COVID on it or something like that, anything on your skin, the UV rays will destroy the virus. So hopefully it would reduce spreading. Hopefully we'll have really low case numbers in the spring in Houston.
I just found this in that study that you mentioned. It says there are published reports indicating that very high doses of UVC are effective for inactivating SARS-CoV-2 or SARS-CoV that have been added to different blood products or remaining virus culture. So it does seem like in different environments that it can be, I guess, rendered harmless or killed or however you would think about it. But yeah, so just another important piece of the puzzle. I just wanted to throw another one in there while we're talking about COVID before we move on to, I know we got some economic stuff to talk about, Micah, and the defunding the cops talk. This one I just found on Twitter earlier today. It's from a couple of days ago. The Toronto Public Health Authority basically made a statement that I know we talked about on the show because the CDC said this months ago and has it on the official CDC website, despite it being called a right-wing talking point. The Toronto Public Health Authority, their official blue check Twitter account for the Toronto Canadian government, said individuals who have died with COVID-19 but not as a result of COVID-19 are included in the case counts for COVID-19 deaths in Toronto. So again, individuals who've died with COVID-19 but not as a result of it are included in the overall counts of deaths in Toronto. And, there's different comments. I see some people were skeptical. Like somebody said, how many people do you think that it even is? If that many people have it, isn't that an issue anyways? Lastly, COVID can make people with existing symptoms worse. Someone with diabetes may have lived 20 more years, but dies with COVID. Does their death not count as COVID? And I basically said those are all good questions. Another good question is how could this practice inflate the numbers and attribute deaths to COVID-19, which might have happened anyways?
Well, we're making causal implication here, right? And a lot of people who aren't like super medical professionals, not just a doctor in general, but down to COVID specialists, right, is going to say the cause here. I think it's fine to say COVID related or COVID, had COVID, but that's not how it's often spoken about. So I think that's an important, takeaway is that these are people who I've heard a particular state health official say the same thing. You mentioned Toronto. A few weeks back, I heard another news show that had a state official, not here in Texas,
Minnesota senator. He's also a doctor, and he was speaking out about it too. I don't know if it's the same one you're thinking about, but it's been popping up. People have been hearing about this for months. So it's just confirmation that another health authority is saying that. And one other comment on that is that I said there's no guarantee that you will die from COVID-19 or other circumstances. Because even if you don't die, I want to reiterate just for those who are like, hey, that's not the only concern. People have said they've got permanent lung scarring and kidney damage and stuff like that, or loss of sense of smell. But there's no guarantee that if you get sick and you have something else that you're going to die from one or the other. Some people get better, but maybe somebody gets test positive for COVID-19, but they also get pneumonia and they die from the pneumonia, but then it gets put down as COVID-19. And maybe that's an important note for a doctor to say, like, hey, look, now we can maybe try to understand how that they work together.
I think if you want
that shouldn't count as COVID-19.
If you want the most accurate picture of what's going on, I think any objective person collecting data would separate those two out. If you want, and then you can add them together in another thing. But why not separate the data out instead of telling the public that they were causally related? I don't know. Dr. Burks, also in America, she came out a long time ago when this was first starting, and she said we're taking a very liberal approach to how we count COVID deaths, which I can only assume is very similar to what's going on in Canada. So I don't know why, like what that does to the death toll, what that does to if more people have the disease. They say 80% of people are asymptomatic. So say more people have the disease than we thought, less people are dying than we thought.
Yeah, that
then
decreases the
it
death
even
toll
goes
more.
even further, and then puts even more like what. My whole issue is we started this thing saying like 5% death rate, and now we're just getting so far away from that, and they are implementing the same measures.
We did the math. For
That's
Texas.
questionable to me.
Oh yeah, maybe Micah did some math earlier.
And you know how we did it last
You
week
guys
too.
don't know math.
We can actually divide numbers.
It was about the amount of cases and deaths in Harris County.
Yeah, so out of
Okay.
the deaths, I think last week when we did it, it was 0.019% of the people that even got it in Harris County or in
That were
Texas that got
tested.
it. And that died out of the people who, were said to have had it. And based on the one today, we did the math for Harris County, and it did 0.012% of the people who contracted COVID or have a COVID-related death.
And that's
So it
again,
went
if
down.
we even trust like the test plus trust these numbers that could have been attributed to something else.
And-
That it was like 370 or something deaths, but it is like 0.02, right?
0.012.
0.012.
So, I mean,
So not even a whole
it is a
2%.
logical question. Like we do need to ask ourselves, like, what's a way to contain the virus, but also allow people to, make free choices, and how can we also, I question if these methods really worked. If they're saying all these cases are going up so
Hey,
high
come
right
on.
now,
I don't know. Have you ever reworn a mask? I mean, come on. How? And then have you ever used a mask and then gone in and had to like touch a door inside a store? Have you ever put on a mask and then you go in and you have to use an ATM machine or any of that stuff that everybody else has put their booger pickers all over? I mean, it's just like arbitrary. Like
There
you're
was
questioning the
another
night
article.
thing. It's the same thing. Like the stuff doesn't still just blow around, get in your eyes, all this other stuff, right? Like it doesn't get on your hands, and then when you go outside, everybody remembers to always wash their hands constantly when they touched something someone else did. No, it's just kind of
another
arbitrary.
argument I had with something, I just kind of like thought about this because I've seen this meme going around with the petri dish, right? And it says like no mask, and it's like a cough, we're talking, and then barely any drop, or there's a bunch of droplets. Mask, less droplets. Why hasn't anyone come out with a petri dish that says? So, if you're talking with people and spitting in their face, I mean that's probably like the most common way of like transfer. But like that, I don't know. Like, what do you guys think about that? Like, is that what's the effectiveness of coughing in your sleeve or like inside your shirt like this? I sneeze inside my shirt like this.
I don't
What's
know.
the effectiveness of that
I hope
compared to a
nobody
mask?
walks up and says, "Hey, buddy," or
Well,
something.
we've got about 15 minutes or so on the KPFT version of the show, and I do have my phone here if you guys want to take calls tonight. 713
Let's do it.
909-0382. And I know we got a couple other stories we
We've
want to
got
get
some
into.
pretty.
Michael,
good
why don't you jump
comments.
into that Politico New York?
Say that number one more
defunding.
time. I'll post it.
713-909-0382. I'll watch the phone. If you want to call in, we will take your call
Hey,
on
watch
air.
the phone this time.
And,
Defunding coming
let's
through.
go into that story, Micah.
So we've been hitting discussions of this for probably as long as the show's been in existence. But the word is trending and people are getting behind it somewhat, and they even claim there's a national movement to defund the police, and it seems to score its biggest victory yet over the weekend with a tentative deal to shift $1 billion away from the New York Police Department. Sounds good. Sounds big, right? $1 million taken away from the New York Police Department. How will they make ends meet? The agreement to cut a sixth of the budget of the nation's largest police force would have been unthinkable even several weeks ago, when it became clear the economic crisis sparked by the coronavirus pandemic would force. There it goes again. You hear it. It's in every story. The economic crisis sparked by the coronavirus pandemic, sparked by the politicians and judges and such closing down the economy, would force huge reductions to city spending. This is that the city's Democratic establishment quickly coalesced around such a proposal is testament to how much the mass protests against police brutality have changed the political dynamic in the city and across the country. But for those pushing the cuts, it's not enough, not even close. This is a lie, said Anthony Pierre, a spokesperson for the Communities United for Police Reform, an umbrella criminal justice organization that has been a leading voice in the defund push in New York. She accused Mayor de Blasio and City Council Speaker Corey Johnson of, quote, using funny math and budget tricks to try to mislead New Yorkers into thinking that they plan to meet the movement's demands for at least $1 billion in direct cuts. Vocal New York, which spearheaded an Occupy Wall Street style protest camp that has taken over the area near City Hall for the past weeks, called the deal a betrayal. De Blasio and the city council are now caught between the growling electoral power of the progressive groups, the demands of protesters on the streets, various legislators urging for a more cautious approach, violent opposition from police unions. Probably not a good day to be in politics. The outcomes serve as one of the highest profile examples to date of how challenging an issue that the defund movement can be for politicians to navigate. And that's kind of one thing I was saying when we're even talking about Sylvester. I'm not trying to cut him any super breaks. I mean, that's not our job. I mean, our job is to hold them accountable. But at the same time, this is something they haven't had to think about. De Blasio started the month insisting he'd be unwilling to reduce funding for the agency that is here to keep us safe. The city council, feeling the heat of the demonstrations on the street outside their offices, see, you can make a difference by letting these people know, and in some cases outside their homes, delivered a package of $1 billion in rollback. See what that did? And reallocations with the implicit threat to vote down the mayor's budget if he didn't go along. Guess what? Eventually he did. The budget deal, first reported Sunday, calls for moving school safety agents who are unarmed but wear police uniforms. That's something we've talked about here before quite often here, the school officers in their role.
I hate those guys.
Do we have a call? Should we interrupt this and take that call? Just make sure we get one in.
Caller says.
All right, you there with us?
Absolutely.
All right, hey, what's going on? What's on your mind?
Hello, everybody. My name is Lawrence, also known as Zero Infinity. How are you doing, gentlemen?
Doing good, bro. How are you?
Hanging in there. All insanity, because everybody got the mind virus, right?
What's on your mind, man? What you want to share?
I'd like to share an article from the German medical journal from 2015, written by Dr. Stefan Lanka, and the title of the article is "The Dismantling of the Virus Theory."
Okay,
so
we got that on screen right now, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Okay, so tell us, you said it's called Dismantling the Virus Theory. Tell us all about it.
Yes, so Dr. Stefan Lanka is a medical whistleblower. In 2015, he's written his article, him being a virologist from Germany, in which the article itself is actually in English, available on PDF. You search that exact title on Google. And in there, he explains how the entire theory and the whole dogma of the medical scientism, for lack of better words, has been controlling Western society since 1858, and the fact that the whole concept of the virus is erroneous, and there are actually other things happening in what people consider viruses, etc., that explain the natural functions of the human body, as in producing enzymes to neutralize poisons. The root word of the virus, it involves toxic or poisonous, and used to be under toxicology. So we are being reintroduced into a medical dogma, not science, but dogma, a mind-controlled belief system to control humanity. And they've pulled this one. And if we can spread this whole idea, it will dismantle the entire, nonsense, BS that has been globally traumatizing everybody, and it has been suffocating everybody with those ridiculous masks that do absolutely nothing except keep carbon dioxide from being expelled.
Hey, we appreciate
becomes
that.
poisonous.
We're gonna cut it right there, brother. We'll comment off air once we let you go. But thank you for calling in.
Absolutely. I really appreciate it. Spread this like wildfire. We can get this going. The article is written in layman's language, easy to understand by any inquiring mind.
Thank you very much for sharing, brother. I hope you have a great night.
Absolutely.
All right. So, yeah, once again, that caller, he was kind of discussing what we've talked about before. For those who follow the Conscious Resistance, they've probably seen an interview I did with Dr. Andrew Kaufman, and there's been others who've come out since this virus has started to spread and really just questioning the presuppositions of germ theory itself. And some people believe in terrain theory, which it was a competing theory before germ theory was kind of proclaimed as the winner, so to speak, and it's what we've all been taught. But the idea that these viruses, which many people have argued, including some of the folks involved in the HIV research, including Kerry Mullis, who's the guy who created the PCR test that they're using for coronavirus and everything else, that they have not been able to actually, this is the theory, because I know it's controversial, that they have never actually been able to isolate a virus, and that's kind of misinformation that we've been told. And so because of that, people think it's actually a bigger hoax than maybe just the numbers are wrong or being fudged or miscalculated. But you know that what they're actually testing for is going to naturally give a false positive. So it gets into a whole other theory. But we appreciate everybody sharing that idea. And I will read the comment again. He said, Dr. Stefan Lanka, the dismantling of virus theory. And there's a PDF. I'm sure if you just search that, the dismantling of virus theory, you find that PDF. We're down just the last couple minutes here. I want to share one story, Micah, that I was sharing with you earlier. Actually, you know who I found it? Ice Cube shared it on Twitter.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
He's been kind of posting a lot of stuff lately, actually waking up more and more. And, sometimes it seems like falling into a narrative, but other times it seems like he's really questioning a lot of things going on. So this one is called No Lessons Have Been Learned, Why the $1 Trillion Coronavirus Bailout Benefited the Rich, from Time Magazine. And I know Time, of course, is often propaganda, but in this case, they're being pretty forward, I think, and just telling people like it is. When Congress passed the $2.2 trillion Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act, in late March, lawmakers were quick to tout its egalitarian guardrails. Unlike the 2008 bailout packages, which funneled hundreds of billions of dollars to Wall Street and padded executives' already cushy pay packages, the CARES Act was shot through with provisions which lawmakers said would ensure the federal funds actually went to those in need. Any money loaned through the new $500 billion Federal Reserve Program, for example, came with oversight measures. But nearly 3 months after the CARES Act passage, none of those guardrails appear to have made much of a difference. The disbursement of the money so far has been riddled with complaints, and analysis show it was disproportionately gone to wealthy corporations and wealthy individuals. Neil Barofsky, who oversaw the Troubled Asset Relief Program, or TARP, under the Obama administration, said, quote, "No lessons have been learned from the 2008 bailout. It certainly seems that way. Those much talked about guardrails that lawmakers imposed on the $500 billion Federal Reserve Program have mostly been irrelevant. By June 17th, the Treasury is committed to spending $222 billion, less than half the funds, and roughly 1.7 trillion of it was not subject. The majority of it, 1.7 trillion, had no restrictions on it. I remember you talking about this. They didn't have to tell anybody where it went, or no accountability basically to any of the money.
Yeah, Mnuchin had
don't worry about
$500
it.
billion that he didn't have to disclose to
Was that for
anybody.
the small businesses?
Yep.
So
That's been one of the most complained about parts of the bailout.
I wanted to mention this because as they kind of mentioned, like 2008, right? And we talked about this. A lot of our show, like the roots of it, were around that time of Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Houston, and this big movement around people being like, "Holy crap, the economy is just collapsing," and they bail out the banks.
And nobody
And
liked the idea that there was
people-
an elite group of people that had special privileges and special power to get.
You had the
money like
Tea
this.
Party and the kind of truthers questioning the Bilderberg types, and then you had the people on the left kind of questioning the 1%er banking class. And for a while, people were paying attention, and now it's like they're getting trillions of dollars, billions of dollars, and people are
No accountability.
fighting each other over masks. And the point I wanted to make, the reason the show is called The Global Reset, I'm working on a longer video, an article, and for those who are watching, I'm showing 2 articles right now. One is called Globalists Reveal the Great Economic Reset is Coming in 2021. And I think that what we're talking about here, this first story about the bailout, is part of what they're calling the Great Reset or the Global Reset. And where that's coming from is the World Economic Forum. Now, I'll remind our listeners, the World Economic Forum was partnered with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Johns Hopkins Center on Event 201 in October 2019, where they simulated a pandemic involving a coronavirus sweeping around the world, and they had all these different provisions and kind of scenarios for how they would respond to it. So that same group, the World Economic Forum, on June 4th, they announced the launch of their Great Reset program, which there's basically podcasts. I've been doing a lot of research where they're saying like, or the global reset, that we're at a time now where we have an opportunity where the capitalist system and all these systems we have are proving that they're inadequate to handle, a pandemic. And it's the pandemic has shown that there are inequalities, and they're literally saying this is our opportunity. We need to push for a great reset. And so I'm showing right now the article talking about it, but then the next one I have is actually from the World Economic Forum's website. And it literally says, now is the time for a great reset. And this kind of little bullet points. We can emerge from this crisis a better world if we act quickly and jointly.
It's going to happen one way or another. Like the system they've been working with, it hasn't worked. It wasn't working in 2008. It's just overblown and continues to create this huge divide, and people don't have a reliable currency.
And we can agree with them on that, right? But obviously, whatever comes out of this reset, it might be a lot different than what we, the people, would suspect is a world better for us. Like,
I have a feeling
the reset's going to happen. Reset's going to happen, so we got to get in the conversation.
Well, this is kind of what I've been saying is like, look, there is a great reset going on, and we need one because, like you were saying, and we all recognize things aren't working. But either they're going to drive it, and so I'm showing right now the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, who was involved in Event 201. His name is Klaus Schwab. Coincidentally, he also is a steering committee member of the Bilderberg Group. He says, quote, "The pandemic represents a rare but narrow window of opportunity to reflect, reimagine, and reset our world." And they have this whole like global reset kind of, I don't know if you guys are seeing on the screen. It's like this web that shows all the different parts of the world, including 5G. It's all going to be 5G, Internet of Things, kind of smart world. And, they go through everything like forests, corporate governance, batteries, plastic, the environment. Like they have this whole thing mapped out. And so it officially launched just about a month ago, June 3rd, or just, within this beginning of this month. And they're calling it the fourth industrial revolution, the Great Reset. Then you got Forbes magazine running articles titled "The End of Humanity" and how transhumanism and the technocratic age is going to help us evolve past, death. And the virus is again showing that we're weak humans. It's like this kind of message that the truth is being
you don't
revealed.
Need that old meat sack anymore. Just download your brain onto this computer.
And this is where I think we are truly
be in space if you want. You can be a robot.
Be eternal.
I think this is where we're truly headed, though, in the big picture. That's why they're bankrupting the economy. And like you've pointed out before, that this stuff has been going on before this. They keep pointing like, due to COVID, but we all know that this was already happening beforehand. And so this virus is revealing all these great truths, right? And like systems are inadequate, et cetera. So we need a great reset. And we are going to affect it one way or the other. We're either going to be passive while they reset the world into whatever the heck they want. I mean, I'm reading CNN mainstream articles talking about U.S. travels, and it said, how are U.S. citizens who love travel going to adapt to this new world order? Like, just in the mainstream like press, like things that people used to kind of like laugh at, like, and I've never been one person to make a big deal every time I see that phrase, but it's like, are they trying to trigger people? Are they just trying to like, I don't know. It just seems so weird. Some would argue that these things are just
I've never understood why it's such a radical idea that literally the most rich and powerful people in the world might get together and talk about how they could consolidate that.
Wouldn't you? If you're rich
I'm
and
just
powerful?
trying to say, why is that such a stretch?
Look, we get together to talk about what's in our interest.
Like, yeah, I know. And I'm just saying, like,
so why wouldn't they?
Yeah, that's crazy. But I think that the worst part about this is it is a world run by, the technocrats. None of these people are elected. The Bill Gateses of the world aren't elected, the Zuckerbergs, the Bezos, but they're funding projects to engineer the climate, funding 5G, funding vaccines that are being rushed, funding the health organizations. But none of us voted.
So I've been
thinking about it like, is it partially our fault for just letting the politicians become so unbelievably overtly crooked? Like,
I think there's a lot of famous people all through history that would say yes.
If you're gonna write a movie about a politician, what would you cast his conflicts as?
We're gonna have to leave it there for right now for KPFT, guys. This has been Freethinker Radio again every Friday on KPFT 3 p.m.
Right.
Next week we'll be back. We got more, just so much to talk about. There's so many issues we don't get into. And if you're watching, we will stay on for a couple more minutes to play some more music and to talk about some more songs. In the meantime, we're gonna hear some crazy music and exit out for just the moment. Thank you guys for listening, for sharing comments, for everything that you guys do. please be a part of the Great Reset. Don't be passive. Make a difference. Get involved some way because it's coming. Peace.
I'm blanking.
All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Freethinker Radio. Doing some after hours. Johnny's getting high with the camera off.
Fire.
Snitching on him.
Tobacco.
This is the second hour of Freethinker Radio. It's not a full hour. We're definitely not doing a full hour. We're not staying for an hour. We're not staying for an hour. We got a couple other stories to cover. And, I mean, if anybody wanted to call in and share their voice with the world instead of just their comments, you can call in at 713-909-0382. 713-909-0382. All right, Micah, have you been hearing this? Or have you seen any of the? I know we try not to pay attention to the latest story on this week's episode of America Soap Opera, but this week's episode of America Soap Opera is Donald Trump ignored warnings about the Russians trying to hire the Taliban to target U.S. soldiers. And
I heard that through the chatter, but what source is that from? Did you check into
I think
that
it's
any
more
yet?
like anonymous sources within the administration or this and that. And they're saying, I mean, it's just kind of one of these things where it might be a big nothing
wouldn't
burger
doubt it
because they're
too
like, well,
much.
maybe he was briefed, but was he really briefed? And if he was briefed, he ignored it. Like I was listening to NPR today on the way in the car there, and they're like, well, somebody was raising the red flag, and either Donald Trump ignored it or, it's just, I don't know. I don't know how much truth there is to it, but I wanted to share this article.
I don't trust anything they say is going on over there.
This is from Caitlin
I don't trust
Johnstone.
anything they say, and I don't trust any of these presidents.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, who do you choose? Like, I'll just choose neither. I'm going to share this story real quickly. This is from Caitlin Johnstone called "The Russia-Afghanistan Story is Western Propaganda at its Most Vile." If you guys don't know Caitlin Johnstone, she's an Australian writer who writes just on her own website. She does good stuff. So she says, all Western mass media outlets are now shrieking about the New York Times first reported story, citing zero evidence and naming zero sources, claiming intelligence says Russia paid out bounties to Taliban-linked fighters in Afghanistan for attacking the occupying forces of the U.S. and its allies in Afghanistan. As of this writing, and probably forevermore, there have been zero intelligence sources named and zero evidence provided for this claim. Now, this is 3 days ago. That could have changed, but I looked it up earlier, and I believe they're still going on anonymous sources. And as she says, as I recently discussed, the only correct response to unsubstantiated claims by anonymous spooks in a post-Iraq invasion world is to assume they're lying until you've been provided with a mountain of hard, independently verifiable evidence to the contrary. The fact that the New York Times instead chose to uncritically parrot these evidence-free claims made by operatives within the intelligence agencies, I mean, which is crazy, right? Like some guy in the CIA is like, "Hey, I got a story for you. I can't tell you any, it's anonymous."
Operation Mockingbird.
It's like, and they just run with it because they want to be the ones to break these stories that they think may be real, maybe.
I wonder how different an anonymous tip is from an anonymous source.
So she says the fact that these Western media outlets are now unanimously regurgitating these still 100% baseless assertions is nothing short of state propaganda. The consensus manufacturing, Overton window shrinking Western propaganda apparatus has been in full swing, with mass media outlets claiming on literally no basis whatsoever that they have confirmed one another's great reporting on this completely unsubstantiating story. So that you have like, from the Washington Post, you have another guy. I'm showing this guy from the Post, John Hudson, tweeting, "We have confirmed the New York Times scoop." And then, so it's like they just parrot each other. It's like, "Hey, they confirmed it. They said it's from anonymous intelligence agencies. We checked in with our anonymous people too, and they said it's true too. And we checked in with ours," and it just gets repeated, and everybody's just going off some anonymous thing. Which, again, as a journalist, sometimes sources have to be anonymous. There are situations where that's only way you're going to get information. But in the mainstream,
they have to stay in jail to protect their sources.
Here in Houston. And in the mainstream, though, that's become like a way that just an easy way out for them to report anything. Like, oh, the CIA, somebody within the CIA, anonymous, whatever, somebody in this cabinet, anonymous, told us this, but they can't tell us anything.
It came off this teletype, but anonymous.
So Charlie Savage, who is actually a good journalist, says Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post have confirmed our reporting the New York Times story's co-author. So he's done good stuff on Bilderberg in the past. So I don't know if that gives it more credibility or not. But it says, "We have confirmed the New York Times scoop from the Washington Post," and it just goes on. Then Wall Street Journal says, "We have matched the New York Times reporting." Just they keep repeating after each other. So anyways, she just from there breaks down the story and questions the veracity of it. But my point here is that she makes some good commentary on the fact that this is what media has become, just repeating each other, parroting each other, confirming each other's own stories, and then repeating that 24/7 on CNN.
Calling everyone else fake news.
Meanwhile, CNN and Fox both say it's the COVID virus that's collapsed the economy. You see what I'm saying? Like they all say the same thing, only wearing different shades of, whatever. They pretend they're so different, but they toe the same line on so many things, such as what we're talking about quite often with the war, with 9/11, with the economy.
They were the first ones to tell us not to wear masks.
Who?
The media.
Oh, yeah. Don't wear a mask. The Fauci, right? Didn't he say they didn't work?
Fauci said, don't wear masks. Surgeon General said, actually, it's more
They told us years ago not to wear masks at protests. They told me not to wear a mask in the bank.
I've been getting in that mask.
Yeah. I mean, we went from not allowing anyone to wear masks to the whole other flip side.
Oh, at the beginning, we didn't know.
But see, that's what we're supposed to be able to roll with the punches and still accept that their knowledge is infallible, and not make any decisions for ourselves. I think if you don't tell the people what's going on and people don't have the capacity to make the decision, we're basically losing everything that you might think that the modern age progressed out of, like in the Enlightenment. Everything that, being able to think for ourselves, being able to make decisions, being able to not just have one person decide for everyone. I feel like, more and more we're slipping away from that. And people will argue, obviously there's times to listen to, for lack of a better word, an expert. Okay, there are. But does that make everything have to, they don't trust us at all? So it has to be mandatory.
I don't think there's ever time to listen to an expert.
Experts.
You should listen to
But by an, I mean just any, not necessarily the
take
expert.
the authority from one of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
And hasn't that always
you
been
can
the
at
case?
least check the expert against another one. Like,
But that's
kind of
the
what I was
point
getting
is,
at. Like,
if
that's
there's-
where the critical thinking comes in, because like there's not just one guy saying one thing. And that's the problem with censorship.
Well, that's the point about giving us information, that it's better that the truth be known by the people, that and maybe like our enemies know the truth also, than for them to hide from us or use it to manipulate us. But I feel like there's just a lot of maybe it's because the media has nothing in mind other than selling ads, that it maybe somehow these industries that also support each candidate who run all these ads are also determining some of the story. I don't know. But I mean, it really starts to seem that way, and that's just kind of too big then to think that somehow, with so many different media organizations, that would be impossible, right? Are there at least 5 now?
At least 5 all being paid by
Derek,
the
is
same
there
people.
any salvageable part of our government?
Shoot, I don't know.
The people individually in there.
Maybe some people who still, whether misguided or not, like think that there's a way to do some good in there, that they could, I don't know, potentially have a role to play in creating a better world. I mean, a lot of those people just seem like they're going to ride that shit till the very end. They're going to just ride it till it can't work anymore. And I do think that, I mean, we're headed to a point where there's economic downturn
I'm just
going
saying,
on right
like,
now.
has our society finally hit that point where it is corrupt to the core? Like,
I think
that's
in
what I was
the
trying to get
U.S.
at. Like, is the whole are we throwing out the baby and the bathwater at this point?
I think the U.S. for sure, and much of the Western world is facing a situation like that, where things are just not capable of being reformed. I don't see how you could. I don't see, like, even if you
we're calling for police to stop being funded, and they're
giving them more money and things like that, right? But then you could take all these independent issues, and as we know, people spend we've met activists who are single issue activists, right? And they just spend
20 years on what we
decades just that one thing, right? And they chip away at it however that can. But then also you got, like, hey, pedophiles getting away with this and that's, like, there's so many pieces of this thing that how do you just vote that out or put in a new person, or even if somehow, like, the people who think
scale?
I don't think that there is a way to do that. What I was getting at is, like, we're having an economic downturn situation where, so, like, 24-hour fitness going out. Michael, you mentioned a few others that went out of business.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I mean, Chuck E. Cheese, GNC, Chesapeake Energy. Chesapeake Energy was a billions of dollar company. These have all declared bankruptcy. They're saying 27,000. This is from this other thing here. That was just facts. But a couple other notes I had on the aside. There was a little Yelp survey that said out of what 7,000. This is just from Yelp. 27,000 of their retailers had shut. 53,000 or 53% that had closed were not reopening.
I mean,
so we're far from the bottom. They're going to have more stimulus.
And, like, our clients that we've been walking for, we are not getting them back. People are losing their jobs, and, like, my girlfriend was a walker as well, and she's walking like 2 dogs a day, and we had so many walks we didn't know what to do with before this, and then now we can't even get our old clients back. So I don't know. It's
gonna that's what I'm saying. It's gonna be felt more and more. Like,
the dominoes are rolling out. We're at like 50 million,
and that's why the talks of more shutdown just scare the hell out of me, because I already see people struggling, and then that unemployment's about to run out. And
so
meanwhile, there'll be less police.
They're going to be, like that article said earlier, the people are going to keep
getting
richer while the people get poorer.
More people are going to be wanting to work for.
They're not showing us that it's partly. It's just. It's like how the police cameras were also to create the narrative for them. This they're not showing us how deep it can go. That's why hiding it from us and burying it under COVID constantly, not that COVID doesn't exist, just makes it worse. They say New York City might be, and I couldn't even believe this, laying off 22 million people. I didn't even know the city had that many people.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Where are all these people going to go? What are they going to do? Like, what? And this is kind of what I was going with earlier. With this plays into their Great Reset plans, right? And the Rockefeller lockstep document from 2010 that said there would be a pandemic that sweeps the world. They would start to, some governments would get more authoritarian,
top down.
People would start to push back, and there would be unrest. And then, with that, they can create order out of chaos. And I think that's what this Great Reset is.
I've already heard.
They're trying to reset the world now.
I've already heard on NPR. They're like, remember the government's the biggest employer in America, and we're going to be having like all these great positions opening up. And I'm seeing like, oh, they're lowering their standards to let people in. So now like instead of needing, you don't need a college diploma basically, and you can have a GED, or they're also emphasizing trade skills in government, which it's one of those things where it sounds good in the moment, but like the more people losing work and then ending up on the other team, now they're dependent on that being sustained, and they're gonna go against things that are not sustaining it, obviously. And with other companies that are operating, like Amazon's gonna keep rolling, UPS is gonna keep rolling, Walmart's gonna keep rolling. I mean, the small business, middle America is just being killed, and killed, like it's not coming back.
Every one of those is
I want to
closer
correct
to
you,
you
Micah.
than any of those other.
Somebody said it's actually 22,000 public employees. We're showing that now, so it's 22,000 in New York City that Dublas.
Right.
Couple years off.
Yeah.
But the point is, it's a lot. It's 22,000, and he said they're doing that to save an additional $1 billion. So it's just showing you that cities, companies, they're all making cuts.
So it's like austerity, but
they're
we're not
getting bailed out.
seeing it as austerity, and we're not seizing it enough to make it where the cuts are where, perhaps it would make sense. Let's think about this. It was a reset. If we're going to have these cuts, then shouldn't we get some of our money back? Shouldn't we pay less money? These are questions I think are relevant to the reset, because otherwise we're going to get forced austerity while they shut down the main street, basically, and all the small businesses, as you said, burden them with $1,000 fine or more if they don't make sure everybody's wearing a mask. Never mind all the pollution these masks and gloves are creating.
Just throwing shit all over the floor.
Yeah, people in the comments were mentioning that. I wanted to bring that up. Like, we're gonna just be seeing, maybe 6 months from now, we'll probably be seeing unfortunate pictures
all
of
over the
birds
bio.
with fucking masks stuck on them. And I don't even want to think about the amount of waste.
Well, I want to go through one story that I wrote recently for Last American Vagabond that kind of points to the larger trend of, it's not necessarily specifically COVID related, but I think when we understand where we're going, that it's part of the overall picture. And it's about social credit scores that are, in a way, already here in the U.S. And not just the U.S. This is a part of I found this study by Kaspersky Labs, which in the mainstream, they've said that they're potentially tied to the Russians. So I'll just add that caveat. But they put out a new study. They interviewed how many thousands? Let me see. I don't remember how many thousands, but 10,000 people from 21 countries. And they put out this new report, and they said, now here's some of the numbers. 32% of adults between 25 to 34. So that's our age group, Johnny, 25 to 34. 32% of adults within our age group have had issues getting a mortgage or loan due to their social media activity. And they're probably not even aware of it. And this is part of what they're calling social scoring systems, which are being used at an alarming rate by governments and business to determine customers or citizens' trustworthiness, much like in China, much like on Black Mirror, that episode that people are familiar with.
Terrible.
And it says, based on these scores, systems make decisions for us or about us, from travel destinations to the associated costs to whether we are allowed to access the service itself. So again, they surveyed 10,000 people from 21 countries in the world. And some of the information is actually kind of disturbing. It says that more than 4.5 billion people use the internet around the world. 3.8 billion have social media accounts. These accounts provide governments and companies with thousands of data points to score people. So less than half of the people who were surveyed, so less than 5,000 people, said that they have heard of social
just
scoring.
over half the world's population uses the internet.
Yeah, exactly. And and most people out of the sample they took here, which is 10,000, obviously is small compared to the global population. But if we use that as an average, less than half people in the world are probably aware that they're being socially scored or social credit, scored behind them. And it says as few as 13% of those polled in Germany and Australia were even familiar with the concepts. And of course, 71% of people polled in China are familiar because it's happening and they're very aware of it there.
Only 71?
Yeah, I guess there's still some people who don't know. Unfortunately, it says, now this is where I think it gets scary. The survey found that 67% of people are willing to share their profiles to secure online shopping discounts.
Cookies.
52% are willing to do it if it means skipping the lines at the airports or other means of travel. And 51% of people said they are fine with government monitoring their social media if it means keeping the public safe.
What about if you get more likes?
No, if it keeps you
they're
safe.
watching it, why don't they
people
give it
are
likes
down
and
if
comments?
like, hey, look, if you're going to give me some discounts while I'm shopping on Amazon,
The government doesn't
if you're going to let me skip the line at the
interact with us
airport,
at all,
if you're going to keep me safe, then more than half the
get rid of
population
some minor
is okay with it.
inconveniences
To have all my data and all my
You can
information.
have it all.
So Kaspersky warns that the public has little protections when it comes to their social media data, stating, quote, "There is no framework we are publicly aware of when it comes to other systems used by organizations and governments to collect our data." Further, the report states that consumers, quote, "can find it impossible to find out what their scores are, how these scores are being calculated, and how they can be corrected if there are inaccuracies." And one of the researchers points to an ever-increasing centralization of data and a push towards a single score, which governments will use to rate their populations. When combined with facial recognition, biometrics at the airports, CCTV cameras, drones, and surveillance planes flying above the cities, it's clear the technocratic state is coming in.
How do we rate them?
And
Like, ain't there a system to know?
here's just a couple of tips from that report.
that's
that
how
they
they'll win
offer.
their elections.
This is some advice they said to safeguard yourself. Don't forget to delete your account and history whenever possible when you stop using an app or online service. Additionally, check which connected services have access to your accounts. And it says, our world is changing. That means every part of our lives could be measured and scored. Use caution when sharing your personal information. Because this is crazy. I mean, you're just posting whatever you got. You get upset. You post something on social media and you get denied jobs. That's happened to people.
I wouldn't hire you based on
You get denied jobs. You get denied.
From your profile.
Apparently, you're getting denied loans. And it's not like these people are told, hey, we found this post on your
you can get
your
canceled.
Facebook.
Let's not forget about that.
You can get canceled. I mean,
Yeah, that's the same as
That's the same as a social credit, except for it's just not top down.
So maybe the thing is to think about who you let in your friends. And basically get rid of these ones that you can't control.
there's also, let me show you this. There's websites like this for those who are watching, mylife.com. And this is one of these companies. And it literally, you go there, it says, reputation is everything. See and improve your public reputation file. Learn the truth about your neighbors, home service providers, dates, and even so-called friends, and more to keep yourself safe.
Well, just go to LexisNexis.
For those who are seeing the
pay
screen,
for a subscription and get everything on everyone.
if you guys can see the screen, look, it has a sample of Christine Davis, 34 from California. And her reputation score is 2.89. It's got a little barometer of, how they'll rate you based on your arrest record, your posts on all these different things. This is a private company.
You're gonna
That's
be
just
low.
they're probably got access to all kinds of servers or data, and they're just feeding it into some AI algorithm that cranks out a score. And you can contact them and get your profile removed from here. They're supposed to legally do that if you can, because whether you've ever used this service or not, you're on the website.
Really?
Yeah, you can go search.
What's
your
it
name,
called?
mylife.com. And this is just
Let me
one
search
example.
myself.
And if you go look at, they'll show you a sample like this. Ashley Martin, which hopefully is not a real person because otherwise they're kind of shaming. Her score is 0.55. Mallory Goley's got 4.45. Wow.
There's Derek. There's his picture. Right there. There you are.
Am
Derek.
I on the Facebook?
Yeah,
On the
Derek
website?
Bros. Derek L. Bros. Associates, Derek Bros. Esther Brandt.
Oh,
Katie, Texas.
There's too many John Schaefer's.
Dude, this is what I'm saying. It's really scary. And so these
Okay,
are the companies that are out there
It's
that
got
are
autofill for Houston.
rating
That's
you already
shit.
in some ways. So if you're not aware, that's happening. It's out there. So check yourself out there if you didn't know about
I'm
social
sure they're
credit.
probably just trying to sell me more.
If you didn't know about My Life, at the very least, though, you can contact them. And you're supposed to be able to tell them to get your information off there, but who knows if they actually listen.
Your stuff's still there.
Let's
When did
stress
you
me
take
out
these pictures? That's
What?
weird.
more. I think I'm gonna leave it there. I mean, I'm exhausted. There's one.
I'm
other-
tired too.
Yeah,
It's late.
let's end it.
Let's
I'm
go
trying to
through a
find
couple of the
myself.
comments. What were the best ones to y'all? That's always
Comments?
a good thing. Yeah, comments from people being engaged on the StreamYard.
What's
there.
my credit score? My score? I don't even know. My score is like probably 1 point something.
Negative.
I've been banned from life, and that's the real serious part of this whole social credit thing, though. Is like, look, if you're not going to wear the mask, if you're not going to wear the
Jeez, they got
QR
question.
code,
Got a lot of
question
people on
it.
here, man.
if you're not going to go ahead and take the vaccine,
Can you invite people to shows from that?
these are all things that will affect your credit score, your credit rating, or your social credit score, whatever they want to call
So
it.
could you look for people with bad scores to be friends with?
So I mean, they're basically going to eventually lock those out. If your score is not above a 3.5, you can't enter. Like certain nightclubs only for certain people with certain ratings and
These
certain
are only
services.
for 5-star people.
Exactly,
who
like
don't
straight
do
up.
It
that.
says here that by clicking on the button, though, Derek, I will agree that I will not use this service or information provided to make decisions about credit, employment, insurance. So, if I look here and
That's
then
literally
I see,
bullshit.
yeah.
That is
Well,
literally
after what I
bullshit.
saw here, I would not hire you. I mean, that's all I gotta say.
He's like, he's touching
He's got a
children, but
radio
I guess
show.
you can't use that information against him.
Let's look up Biden.
Yeah, I mean, come on. What do you think they're gonna do? Like, how else are people gonna use that? But try to like just look up things.
Well, this is just for stalking.
Yeah, it's
You know what I mean?
it's
Why don't they
dangerous.
just call
You
it
can watch
stalking
quiet.
.com?
You can watch quietly from afar.
Like I get in some way if you're like trying to hire somebody and maybe you don't have access to some big fancy service to do background checks, whatever, you try to go use a website like that and just run your people through there. But it is really crazy. All right, guys, we're gonna end it for now. Thank you so much for listening. There's a great reset going on. We get to decide which way it goes.
Thanks for sharing your ideas, your comments, your thumbs ups. Thanks for everybody who shares the video, both the YouTube or Facebook. And I know we're on some other platforms. It's very exciting to us still, at least me, that we're on all these different platforms. We've been tightening it up. And one of the reasons is we want to make it great for y'all. So thanks for everything you do to help us reach more people with these ideas and for sharing your ideas with us.
All right, until next time, peace.